Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I am Tanvi Taneja, coming up in the next hour. Both Harris and Trump predict win as their campaigns close. Whatever the verdict, our relationship with the US will grow, says India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. India says Canada has developed pattern of making allegations without evidence, slams placing Indian diplomats under surveillance. US urges Israel to substantially increase humanitarian aid in Gaza. And North Korea fires ballistic missiles outside Japan's economic zone. Tokyo condemns the move. So let's get you all the latest updates on the US presidential polls as the race for the White House nears the finish line. So over 186 million Americans are eligible to vote in the US presidential elections today. Both candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, made last-minute pitch to remind voters about their choice. Vote, vote and come out for vote were the words being pitched by both Democratic and Republican candidates in their respective rallies. While Trump focused on different districts in North Carolina, Harris was in Pennsylvania, including Philadelphia. Donald Trump maintained his anti-immigration stance, while Kamala Harris tried to project her as the president for all. DD India's Akhilesh Suman has filed this report.
Former US President and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump addressed the rally in battleground state of North Carolina. He made fervent appeal to voters to come out and vote to make America great again.
They have an expression, I hate the expression actually, but it's ours to lose. Does that make sense to you? It's ours to lose. If we get everybody out and vote, there's not a thing they can do. And you're going to say that to her. You're going to say, you've done a terrible job, you're grossly incompetent, we're not going to take it anymore. Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out. Get the hell out of here. You're out of here. Get out of here.
Trump also threatened to impose 25% to 100% tariff on Mexican imports. Later, Trump addressed rallies in Pennsylvania's Reading and Pittsburgh, breaking up the issue of migrants again.
I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. You know, 1798. That's when they ran the country a little tougher than we run it today. Today you get a little slap in the wrist when you kill somebody. You kill somebody. Oh. And I'm hereby calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer.
On the last day before the election, Democratic candidate and US Vice President Kamala Harris zeroed in on door-to-door campaign in suburbs of Pennsylvania, greeting their residents with surprise hugs and a brief chat. She also visited a Puerto Rican restaurant where she met with the diners. Democratic presidential nominee and US Vice President Kamala Harris also addressed rallies in Scranton and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She too made appeal to her supporters and volunteers not to lose chance to vote.
So over these next 24 hours, I know everyone is here, including our youngest leaders. I see you over there. I know you're not ready to vote because you look like you're about 8, but you tell the adults in your life why it's important. They vote, okay? Let's get this done.
Accusing Trump's intention to abolish poor-friendly health insurance, popularly known as Obamacare, Harris assured the Latino voters that she will not allow it to be reversed.
And to those certain individuals who still want to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, trying to take us back to the days when insurance companies could deny people with pre-existing conditions, well, to them, we say we are not going back. We are not going back.
Former independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. urged his supporters not to vote for him but choose Trump instead. He has withdrawn his candidature, but the US Supreme Court had denied removing his name from the ballot in Wisconsin and Michigan.
Hey, everybody. A lot of people are asking me if they live in a red state or a blue state, should they still be voting for me? What about swing states? The answer is easy. No. No matter what state you live in, you should be voting for Donald Trump.
Recent surveys show Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in a neck-and-neck fight. Both have focused on Pennsylvania in the last leg of campaigning. Pennsylvania is the biggest prize among the battleground states, offering 19 of the 270 electoral college votes. Akhilesh Suman's report for DD India.
A small town of Dixville Notch, New Hampshire, kicked off the US election day with its traditional midnight voting on Tuesday. At midnight, the town's 6 registered voters gathered to cast their first votes on US election day. Residents have cast the first ballots here for the last 60 years. In the 2020 election, only 5 residents had cast their vote in this small community located in the northern White Mountains near the Canadian border. This year's vote in Dixville Notch was notable with a tie between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, each receiving 3 votes. So with just a few hours left now for the election day, preparations for polling have been completed. DD India's Amritpal Singh reports from West Palm Beach in Florida.
Preparations have been completed for Tuesday's election. There is no set national time for voting to begin on the morning of November 5th. Most US states begin voting at 7 a.m. in their local time, while others start as early as 5 a.m. or as late as 10 a.m. Polls close at a range of times across the country too. Voting will end as early as 6 p.m. US Eastern Time in some states. Others do not close until midnight US Eastern Time. Across the country, a surge in election threats has the authorities deploying new tactics to protect people and ballots. Given the imminent threat of violence on the election day or the following days once results start coming in, if there is a moment of denial, election officials around the country are taking no chances. Election authorities here in various counties, especially sensitive counties, are installing steel frames, bulletproof glasses, steel doors to prevent crowds or any kind of vandalism that may take place. Given that it's the US president's election, there is considerable interest from around the world. Where I am in Palm Beach County, media from around the world has gathered here. This is in fact the home county of Donald Trump, and the convention center that you see on the other side is where Donald Trump would give his victory speech from if he wins this election. As the last lap of the most controversial election in American history comes to a close, it's just a matter of hours before the Americans start voting for the November 5th election. Counting will begin soon after voting ends. And if it's a clear election, results will be out the next day. But if it gets stuck, which it could, if it goes into recounts and lawsuits, it would be days before we know who the next president of the United States would be. With cameraman Sanjay Jaina, this is Amritpal Singh at the Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida.
So election anxiety and uncertainty prevails over the outcome of the US presidential polls. Haunting images of violence at the US Capitol on January 6, 2021 are still fresh in the minds of the people. Security has been heightened across the country. DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh takes stock of the arrangements in the Capitol, Washington, D.C.
We are in front of the US Capitol in Washington, D.C. This is the seat of United States Congress, the legislative arm of the US government. This also happens to be the site of the shocking January 6, 2021 attack, when armed mob had stormed the Capitol in order to disrupt the election results process. In view of that unprecedented event, this time over in these elections, exceptional security arrangements have been made to ensure that no untoward incident takes place. Since morning today, steel fences have been erected and been put all across important public buildings, White House, the Capitol and other buildings, in order to secure them from any kind of intrusion. We also see members of the police and Secret Service, sniffer dogs, taking rounds of the city at different places to ensure that security is maintained. The National Security Guard has also been activated, put on alert to ensure that any untoward incident is taken care of. We also see the use of bulletproof glasses, drone surveillance at the polling stations, along with the security of the candidates. The security of the polling stations, the polling officials, is also paramount this time over. There is anxiety, tension and excitement in the air as Donald Trump and Kamala Harris battle it out in one of the most polarizing elections. Soon we'll know unofficially who's going to be the winner and the next president of the United States. But this building, Capitol building, is where early next year the electoral votes will be counted and formally the next president of United States will be declared. With camera person Jay Shankar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in Washington, D.C.
And Professor Swaran Singh of the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi joins us on the US elections. Sir, welcome to the program. So many political observers have billed this unpredictable race for the 47th president of the US as the most consequential one in decades. Would you agree?
Absolutely, Tanvi. I think it is the most televised elections around the world, obviously making everyone enormously interested in moment-to-moment developments that are happening. And as Shubhendu and Amrit reporting from United States showed us, this is also perhaps unprecedented in terms of the security and caution in terms of training of election staff in how to de-escalate situations, how to report in case there's any criminal activity and so on. So in many ways, this is first time kind of an election. But most interesting, of course, is the neck-to-neck, which again, both your reporters mentioned. Neck-to-neck competition that we are seeing, and you did mention how 3+3 votes were divided equally among two in the first polling that took place, which fundamentally means that outcome of this election is going to be equally difficult to predict even after elections are completed tomorrow. And in that sense, it could also involve litigation. I understand more than 100 cases, suits are already filed in courts regarding eligibility of voters and lists and so on. And, particularly when margins are as low as 0.5%, repeated recounts are going to happen. And then, of course, we also know that in the United States, unlike in India, it's not the national authority that controls how election process will proceed. It's the provinces, it's the states that will have different time schedules of when to begin, when to end on 5th of November. And again, counting, I understand about 80 million votes have already been cast, either through post or mail or through early voting, etc., etc. And some states allow that counting of early votes earlier than the election day. Others want them to wait until the election day. There are cases when the election counting has taken almost 10, 12 days after election day is completed. So fundamentally, it's going to be equally, puzzle for maybe several days to come. Though media would like to immediately try to, insinuate and gesticulate what has happened in election of 5th of November. But it's going to be interesting outcomes. And I think both candidates are almost equally, though Donald Trump has a slight edge apparently, but both are equally neck to neck. And, either of them could be sitting in White House for the next 5 years.
Okay, talking of the election campaign, which has now come to a close, why was this US presidential campaign so very bitter and so very vitriolic this time?
I think, first of all, that we are all worldwide increasingly familiar with the personality of former President Donald Trump, who, as you know, is saying that he's already won the election, or he's going to announce or wants them to announce election outcomes on the evening of the election day. The tone and tenor, of course, in some ways is also global trend where election speeches are becoming increasingly personalized. And we saw when suddenly in July, President Joe Biden decided to withdraw. And then the whole Republican campaign has to recast itself, because till then it was very personalized. It was focusing, almost caricaturing President Joe Biden, which he of course does with Kamala Harris also. And of course, in that sense, the harsh tone of both sides to some extent, because Democrats also need to respond to the tone and tenor that the Republicans have presented. To some extent, that could be called a trend which is becoming global in almost several democracies around the world. But more specifically, I think it also is a, could be called inflection point, a change in the way elections are contested since Donald Trump came into electioneering from 2016 onwards.
Okay, should Donald Trump lose, how likely is it that he will claim that he was the victim of widespread fraud and challenge the results?
I think that is very likely, because he's already been one after another speeches of his are mentioning that in case he loses, this will be because of the fraud and cheating that the other side is going to do. So that insinuation is already in place. It's not going to come later. But apparently we will have to wait and watch. And that is why you see the kind of arrangements that your reports showed that are being made, to take care of any hoodlums coming to disrupt any election process. And of course, following election day, also there's going to be enormous focus on ensuring peace and stability in American society, not to see that, January 6th of 2021 is repeated again, which of course we still have time. But yes, there is enormous expectation, anticipation that in case, as your question is, candidate Donald Trump loses election, it's very likely that there could be, disruptions in United States. Now, to what scale and speed disruptions happen, that of course remains a question to be discussed as we move into this. But I think, yes, that concern is really genuine.
Okay, should Kamala Harris win, she will make history as the first US woman president. What does that do, if anything, for the American woman and for the election of women presidents in the US in the years ahead?
I think the world has increasingly, for about last 3 to 4 decades, become increasingly conscious of gender mainstreaming. And United States, being the leading nation in international community, has this opportunity to, set the record straight and, ensure that the woman for the first time, takes over presidency and then sits in White House for next 4 years. Since the competition is neck-to-neck competition, I think that element of taking this opportunity, historic opportunity, to see the first woman becoming the president of the United States is also going to weigh in. And I noticed that already several women's organizations have come out in public saying that this is our opportunity, and women should particularly, and of course men as well, should support and rectify that record, which now increasingly the world begins to look at as American conservatism, as a social trait or social tendency. Because whenever women tried, they have not been successful in taking presidency ever earlier. Twice earlier attempts have been made. Hillary Clinton was a very strong candidate, and we know that popular vote was in her favor. And despite that, she couldn't become the president of the United States. So I think Kamala Harris, apart from being younger compared to former President Donald Trump, has also this enormous advantage of being a person of color, and of course also being the woman who's very articulate in many ways also.
Okay.
So she's been able to focus much more on issues than caricaturing the opponent.
Interestingly, Kamala Harris has not made her gender a major talking point in her election campaign. Rather, she has chosen to highlight policy. Why do you think she has taken such a stance?
I think that would also be seen as revealing certain amount of weakness in our leadership if you're trying to make gender as your strong point, because she wants to present herself as a national leader who can give direction to where she wants to take United States in coming 4 years. So in that sense, I think there's also this whole debate on beyond the two genders. The other genders are also in debate, and we have seen former President Donald Trump being unusually harsh on some of those identities in that sense. So she is trying to complete the whole spectrum of identities, not just man and woman, male or female. And therefore, I think it's important for her not to really highlight her being a woman, therefore, because she wants to present herself as a leader for all identities and all genders in the United States.
Thank you very much, Professor Swaran Singh. I request you to stay on with us in the show as we tell our viewers that Americans are preparing to vote for the election day. It will be a hectic Super Tuesday, of course, not just in the United States of America, but for millions of viewers worldwide. So officials are calling for patience, and they are saying that They are calling for patience as they tally ballots in what could be a historically close presidential race, warning it could take days to find out who has won. Under the US system, citizens do not vote directly for their leader. Instead, their ballots elect the 538 members of a group called the Electoral College, which then elects the president and the vice president. So around 81 million people have voted ahead of Tuesday in early voting, over half of the total ballots cast in 2020. Let's see as to why the results could get delayed. Certification is a formality, but there are risks of obstructions. At least 22 county election officials voted in 2022 to delay certification in battleground states. At least 35 election officials refused to certify election results and may be in a position to do so again, according to Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Successful obstruction could impact state and federal certification deadlines. The certification process has come under scrutiny, and since Trump refused to concede the 2020 election, there has been a deluge of lawsuits from both the parties ahead of Election Day, which might also complicate the tabulation. Now let's see what the deadlines are. The deadline for states to certify the results is December 11th. And each state's appointed electors then cast their votes for the candidate who won in their popular vote. By December 25, electoral certificates of each state must be received by the President of the Senate, who is also Vice President Harris. On January 6th, Congress counts and confirms the results before the new president is inaugurated on January 20th. You're watching DD India News Hour, still to come on the show. UN Chief Antonio Guterres says Israel's ban on its operations will lead to the collapse of aid in Gaza. UK reports 2 additional cases of deadly new Mpox variant. Indonesia's active Mount Leotobe Laki-Laki volcano killed 10 people, damaging thousands of houses.
Who will be the next president of United States of America?
Will Donald Trump make a dramatic comeback, or will Kamala Harris become America's first woman president?
It's a tight race to the White House.
The knives are out and the battle lines sharply drawn.
He's becoming increasingly unstable and unhinged.
She's a threat to democracy because she shouldn't even be the candidate.
I'm Amritpal Singh.
I'm Shubhendu Ghosh.
We travel across the United States
To decode the issues at the heart of this polarized election.
Watch this space only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Tanvi Taneja. On to updates from West Asia. A day before the US election, the Biden administration stepped up criticism of Israel for not doing enough to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza. The US State Department called the results not good enough, as a 30-day deadline looms for Israeli officials to meet certain requirements or risk potential restrictions on military assistance. The message was conveyed by US Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant during a phone call. The Secretary emphasized the importance of ending the conflict in Gaza and bringing all of the hostages home, as well as planning post-conflict situation.
As of today, the situation has not significantly turned around. We have seen an increase in some measurements. We've seen an increase in the number of crossings that are open, but just if you look at the stipulated recommendations in the letter, those have not been met. We're not at the end of the period yet. They have not. If you look at what we ultimately judge, what we ultimately judge on, which is the results on the ground, the results are not good enough today. They certainly do not have a passing grade. They have failed. I said they have failed to implement all of the things that we recommend in that letter. Now, that said, we are not at the end of the 30-day period. It's not the end of the semester. We don't hand out grades in the middle.
Meanwhile, as the world leaders continue to urge immediate ceasefire in Gaza, reportedly the United States and Saudi Arabia are discussing a potential security agreement that won't involve a broader deal with Israel. Sources say the agreement under discussion is not a full defense treaty. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the White House want to reach the agreement before President Joe Biden leaves office in January. Further, a day after Israel notified the United Nations of ending decades-old ties with UNRWA, UN Chief Antonio Guterres said that Israel's ban on its operations will lead to the collapse of aid in Gaza. He added that UN lawyers are reviewing the move. However, the end of the 1967 agreement is immediate.
For the Secretary General, he continues to believe that the work of UNRWA is performing the occupied Palestinian territory is essential, and that there is no alternative to UNRWA as we see it. If the law is fully implemented, right, and Israel makes it impossible for UNRWA to continue to operate, this will have no effect on Israel's responsibility to provide for the population, and any failure to provide the necessary support to the population will be Israel's responsibility. We're obviously, our lawyers and UNRWA's lawyers are also taking a closer look at the letter.
The United States, too, has opposed the Israeli legislation on UNRWA and was studying the Israeli letter to the UN to learn what the implications might be. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has for years called for UNRWA to be dismantled, accusing it of anti-Israeli incitement. North Korea fired several ballistic missiles towards the East Sea of the Korean peninsula. The launch was Kim Jong-un's first weapon test since being accused of sending soldiers to Russia. DD India's Ayushi Bhatnagar has more.
Just hours ahead of the United States presidential elections, North Korea fired a barrage of short-range ballistic missiles towards the East Sea of the Korean peninsula on Tuesday. South Korea detected launches on Tuesday morning from the Sarewon area south of the capital Pyongyang. Calling North Korea a serious security threat, Japan also confirmed that North Korea fired a ballistic missile that fell outside its exclusive economic zone.
We are currently analyzing the details in close cooperation with the United States and South Korea. But we believe that the missiles fell in the Sea of Japan off the east coast of the Korean peninsula outside our maritime exclusive economic zone. We believe that North Korea's actions, including its repeated launches of ballistic missiles, are absolutely unacceptable and threaten the safety and security of our nation, the region, and the international community.
The launch comes just days after Pyongyang said it tested an intercontinental ballistic missile, triggering condemnation from South Korea, the United States, and Japan. The three countries conducted a joint military exercise in response.
Despite being permanent members of this council, Russia and China have shamelessly protected Pyongyang from any reprisal or even condemnation of its actions. To my Russian and Chinese colleagues, it is time to stop obstructing and rejoin the rest of us in voicing a united and clear denunciation of the DPRK's behavior, to call on all UN member states to fully and faithfully implement Security Council resolutions, and to work together to prevent the DPRK's procurement activities and revenue flows, supporting its unlawful WMD and ballistic missile programs.
The launch also came hours after US and South Korean militaries called on Pyongyang to withdraw its troops from Ukrainian front, warning that North Korean soldiers in Russian uniforms were being deployed for possible action against Ukraine. With Ayushi Bhatnagar, Bureau Report, DD India.
Britain has detected 2 more cases of the new Mpox variant, clade LB, in household contacts of the first case, the country's health security agency said on Monday, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to 3. The government agency that added the risk to the population remained low. The clade LB variant is a new form of the virus that is linked to a global health emergency declared by the World Health Organization in August. 19 African countries have seen more than 48,000 suspected Mpox cases, including 1,048 deaths so far this year, according to the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, with cases in the continent surging by 500% from last year. 2 Chinese nationals were shot at and injured on Tuesday in Pakistan's commercial hub of Karachi after a string of attacks that spurred Beijing to demand tougher security for its citizens. More details are awaited. In October, a bombing near Karachi's international airport killed 2 Chinese engineers in an attack claimed by separatist militant group, the Baloch Liberation Army. The runway of Dhaka's Shah Jalal International Airport will be closed for 3.5 hours per night for a week in November due to maintenance work. The runway will be shut down from 1 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. daily from November 8th to 14th. All flights landing and taking off at the airport will be temporarily suspended during this repair period for routine maintenance activities for flight operations at the airport, and this includes maintenance of the runway lighting system. The officials have advised passengers to check their flight schedules in advance and to confirm with their respective airlines. Thousands of people from Indonesia's popular tourist island of Flores have been evacuated after Mount Lewatobi Laki-Laki erupted, killing at least 10 people. Indonesia's disaster agency warned of potential flash floods and coal lava flows in the coming days. Indonesia sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an area of high seismic activity atop multiple tectonic plates. Still to come on DD India News Hour. India hosts Maiden Asian Buddhist Summit, taking forward its Act East policy. ISA showcases milestone solar projects and sets new global priorities at the 7th Assembly. And 4-day Chhath Puja festivities to pay reverence to the sun god begin in northern India. Tracking at this hour. Both Harris and Trump predict win as their campaigns close. Whatever the verdict, our relationship with the United States will only grow, says India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. India says Canada has developed a pattern of making allegations without evidence, slams placing Indian diplomats under surveillance. US urges Israel to substantially increase humanitarian aid in Gaza. And North Korea fires ballistic missiles outside Japan's economic zone. Tokyo condemns the move. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is currently on Australia visit in the first leg of his 2-nation tour. In Canberra on Tuesday, the minister attended the inaugural session of the Raisina Down Under, that is the Australian edition of India's Raisina Dialogue. The Raisina Dialogue is India's flagship conference on geopolitics, geoeconomics, addresses critical international challenges, providing a valuable platform to discuss key trends shaping the Indo-Pacific. Addressing the event, Jaishankar highlighted the remarkable growth in India-Australia partnership in recent years and India's efforts at forging diverse partnerships in a multipolar world.
Bilateral which has changed the most is Australia. One metric of how a relationship is really is, okay, so how often did the PMs meet? And if you go beyond that, you look at the quality of our defense cooperation today, the fact that we've been able to do the first phase of a free trade agreement, the fact that Australian universities were the first universities to come and say, okay, we are prepared to explore a new Indian policy regarding foreign educational presence. I look at the Indian diaspora numbers. So I look at the trade volume, which is, I think, $48 billion right now.
During his visit, India's Jaishankar met Australia's Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Richard Marles. Both leaders spoke about the strong momentum in India-Australia's comprehensive strategic partnership. The minister also shared perspectives on Indo-Pacific and regional developments with Richard Marles. Earlier in the day, Jaishankar attended the 15th India-Australia Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue with his counterpart Penny Wong in Canberra. The two leaders discussed respective neighbourhoods, Indo-Pacific, West Asia, Ukraine and the global strategic scenario. Speaking on the US election, the External Affairs Minister said that India's relations with the US will grow irrespective of the verdict of the elections.
We have actually seen steady progress in our relationship with the US over the last 5 presidencies, including an earlier Trump presidency. So when we look at the American election, we are very confident that whatever the verdict, our relationship with the United States will only grow.
On China, Minister Jaishankar said that the two sides have made some progress in disengagement, terming it a welcome move, which opens up the possibility for dealing with other challenges. His remarks came a day after the government confirmed that verification patrolling has commenced on mutually agreed terms in Demchok and Depsang along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh.
On October the 21st, we concluded the last lot of disengagement agreements. We had done some earlier. These are currently in the process of being implemented. The last agreement was primarily around patrolling rights of the two sides. So we think all in all it's a positive development. The fact that with that, once it's done, the disengagement process is completed. We have other challenges to address, including de-escalation of forces. But at Kazan, on the sidelines of the BRICS meeting, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi had a meeting. It was agreed that the foreign ministers and the national security advisors would meet. So we will have to look, at further building on this.
India remains deeply concerned about the safety and security of Indian nationals in Canada, especially after the violent disruption outside consular camp in Brampton, Ontario on Sunday. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi said such acts of violence will never weaken India's resolve, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar too expressed concern, saying that it was unacceptable that Indian diplomats had been placed under surveillance by Canada.
I think what happened at the Hindu temple in Canada was obviously deeply concerning. And you would have seen the statement first by our official spokesperson and also the expression of concern by our Prime Minister yesterday. So that should, I think, convey to you how deeply we feel about it. One, Canada has developed a pattern of making allegations without providing specifics. Secondly, when we look at Canada, for us, the fact that they're putting our diplomats under surveillance is something which is unacceptable.
Earlier on Monday, the Ministry of External Affairs said that India condemns the acts of violence perpetrated by extremists and separatists with an expectation that those indulging in violence will be prosecuted. And Professor Swaran Singh, School of International Studies, JNU, continues to stay with us. Professor Swaran, as the External Affairs Minister, Jaishankar has said that Canada placing Indian diplomats under surveillance is unacceptable. Do you think India is reasonable in demanding more stringent action from the Canadian government on the matter?
Definitely, Tanvi, but it's not just the surveillance issue. On several counts, the behavior of Canadian Prime Minister has surprised not just Indians, but his own citizens, his own ministers, his own parliamentarians. pictures that are on your television are pictures that used to be pictures coming from, unstable, poor, backward countries. So first of all, these are all people who are citizens of Canada. And what is the state of law and order in Canada in that sense? If this is what is coming on television, that people are just chasing each other and hitting each other, and that's not a picture of a developed, peaceful country. Of course, I therefore call this whole tension not as tension between Canada and India. It's a tension between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and India, or maybe with himself, because it lacks any explanation as to the kind of language is being used, the kind of insinuations that are being made in public through media. That's not how friendly nations deal with each other. And in that sense, I think this is only bringing enormous discredit to himself. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is becoming a kind of a target of criticism by his own former ministers, who are using very harsh language to describe him as someone who has no clue about how to do nation building. The impact on India and Canada relations is one part of the story. The credibility of Justin Trudeau himself, the future of his Liberal Party, the future of Canadian society, social fabric. I have absolutely no way to understand why, for just staying in power, that is the only explanation that is possible. He's trying to pander to some of these separatist sympathizers, so to say, and is really with enormous cost to Canada, to his own political party. And last time, about 25 or so MPs had written a letter to him that you should resign on 28th of October, which has passed now. So I have no idea till what time he's going to continue in power as Prime Minister. And I think till then he will continue to ratchet up such repeated bouts of tensions, having impact on the ground level with all his other, sort of administrative staff, police, and of course some of these people who are inflicting violence with absolutely no qualms, no limitation. And after these videos, also the kind of statement that has come from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is just his concern for violence, without naming people who are inflicting violence, which are so visible with their flags in hand. So this lacks any explanation as to why this kind of behavior is continuing. India has tried its best to say, please share evidence with us. Example of United States is very clear. India is working very closely with the United States if there are such concerns. And language from the United States is also very different. So it lacks any logic to understand the kind of strategy or language or behavior that we have seen from Prime Minister Trudeau. And that is going to have such implications for people on the ground behaving likewise, at least some of them behaving likewise.
So what happens to India-Canada relations in the near future, including trade and immigration?
I think fundamentally, a lot of work still continues, a lot of trade, investments, cooperation continues. And because I often say business doesn't listen to politics if it is trying to create chaos, of course that creates disruption for sure. And I think for the relationship, we have to perhaps wait until the exit of Justin Trudeau. He apparently is not showing any inclination to change his tone and tenor, which could be tomorrow, next week, next month, worst case till October of next year if he survives with support of Jagmeet Singh's New Democratic Party whenever no confidence motion comes against him. But definitely October next year, he's not going to come back to power. I hope he gets even elected as a member of parliament, let alone as Prime Minister. The kind of angst, anxiety, anger that is visible now inside Canada against him is so apparent. I think he should take a cue from this and rectify his behavior and then make sure India is a rapidly growing country, and most countries are trying to be friendly to India. You saw Foreign Minister in Canberra, and Foreign Minister Penny Wong mentioned her respect for multiculturalism and so on, saying that citizens should feel safe. So Justin Trudeau's friends themselves are beginning to be cautious and distant in terms of what they want to say about what is happening in Brampton and Surrey. So it lacks any explanation fundamentally what explains that kind of behavior of a person who's been 3-term Prime Minister of Canada. a developed and a friendly Commonwealth country, which should have a very different way of dealing with, even if it had a concern of that kind, as to how to resolve these issues. This absolutely is not understandable why he's continuing to do this. Only worry is that that has impact now all the way to the ground level in the street. Violence, which is where India's concerns are genuine, because the large number of, just 250,000 students of India, young people who are looking for future. And of course, large number, about 2% population of Canada is of Indian origin. That concern India would definitely have. So it's not limited to surveillance of Indian diplomats in Canada, which of course is a very serious concern. There's a series of other issues on which I think India should really, I have no idea, maybe go around and then
Prime Minister Modi has made his statement today as well. So certainly things being heated up in this soaring of ties. Okay, we'd like to leave it here. Thank you very much, Professor Swaran Singh, for showing us perspective on both these stories. Thank you very much for joining. India is hosting the first Asian Buddhist summit, Buddha Dhamma, taking forward its Act East policy, which is principled on collective, inclusive and spiritual development of Asia. The summit is being held by the Indian government in collaboration with the International Buddhist Confederation on November 5th and 6th to celebrate the rich heritage of Buddhism. The theme of the summit is Role of Buddha Dhamma in Strengthening Asia. India's President Draupadi Murmu inaugurated the summit and highlighted the unique position Buddhism holds in the spiritual and cultural history of India and Asia.
When the world today is facing an existential crisis on many fronts, not only strife but also the climate crisis, your large community has much to offer to humankind. The various schools of Buddhism show the world how to counter narrow sectarianism. Their central message remains focused on peace and non-violence. If one word can capture the Buddha Dhamma, it has to be Karuna, or passion, which is what the world needs today. As the theme of the summit has captured it well, we need to discuss the role of Buddha Dhamma in strengthening Asia. Indeed, we need to expand the discussion to see how Buddha Dharma can bring peace, real peace, to Asia and to the world, a peace free from not only physical violence, but also from all forms of greed and hatred. The two mental forces at the root of all our miseries, according to the Buddha.
The President also released a special logo of the Asia Buddhist Summit. A special exhibition on the theme India as the Dhamma Setu, or the bridge connecting Asia, was also organized at the summit. India's Minister of New and Renewable Energy, Prahlad Joshi, attended the third edition of the high-level conference on new technologies for clean energy transition as part of the International Solar Alliance's 7th Assembly being held in New Delhi. The conference on Tuesday was attended by ministerial delegations of the ISA member countries, policymakers, experts and industry leaders. It aims to drive real-world change and make significant strides toward achieving global climate goals by fostering collaboration, sparking innovation and sharing knowledge. The minister highlighted India's efforts in renewable energy. India is hosting the 7th edition of the International Solar Alliance in the capital from 3rd to 6th of November.
As far as the President is concerned, India was elected unanimously, that is unopposed. This shows how the world is recognizing India's efforts as far as especially in the renewable concern under the leadership of Prime Minister Shri Modi. And now people have accepted the leadership of India because of our performance and commitment. Though per capita emission of the India in comparison to the all major developed country, it is quite low. In spite of that, Prime Minister has committed to the World Forum that we will do our best and also assured that India will be net zero by 2070.
Lead India's Tapas Bhattacharya spoke to the Minister for Renewable Energy of Antigua and Barbuda on the occasion, Melford Nicholas.
The International Solar Alliance is currently going on at the session at Bharat Mandapam, and I have with me Melford Nicholas, who is the Minister of New and Renewable Energy from Antigua and Barbuda. Sir, tell us, you've come here. How do you see this whole area? How do you see India as a country leading from when it comes to International Solar Alliance?
India is one of the founding members of the International Solar Alliance for renewable energy. I think the International Solar Alliance is an ideal environment for us to be able to ascend the learning curve in the first instance, to be able to network with many experts that have been made available to us here at this forum.
So, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has pledged that by 2070, India will become net neutral. How do you see Prime Minister Modi's leadership and India, vis-a-vis going forward, becoming net neutral and sustainable in the future?
Well, that is important because based on India's geographically large size and equally its significant population, for Prime Minister Modi to make that as a projection and a trajectory for that time, it means that if India achieves that, the world will be a better place.
So that was Mr. Melford Nicholas, the Minister from Antigua Barbuda, telling us that it's time for the world to take note of how India is going ahead with sustainable and make sure that they learn from them, because, as he mentioned, Caribbean islands themselves are facing the severe consequences of climate change. With camera person Navin, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for GD India from Delhi.
Chhath Puja festival begins today with religious fervour and gaiety. The 4-day-long Chhath Puja involves fasting, bathing in rivers or ponds and offering prayers to the setting and the rising sun. The festival is celebrated as a way of showing thanks to the sun god for sustaining life on earth and seeking his benevolence for prosperity, health and happiness. The energy of the sun is believed to cure diseases, increase lifespan and bring peace. By worshipping the sun and goddess Chhati, devotees pray for divine protection for their families. The ponds and river banks in Nepal's Terai and Kathmandu Valley are being cleaned and decorated for the Chhath Puja. Kamal Pokhari and Gauri Ghat at river Bagmati are preferred places to perform the puja. Around 1.7 lakh kilograms of banana worth 1.7 crore rupees were imported into Nepal through the Rakshol border point on the occasion. In Janakpur, nearly 4,000 kg of bananas were imported through Bhitta Mod Point during the same period. Various varieties of bananas are imported to Janakpur Dham from Assam, West Bengal, Hajipur, Thakurganj and Champaran. As per traders, the price of bananas coming from India is cheaper than in Nepal. The Film and Television Institute of India's award-winning Kannada short film Sunflowers Were the First Ones to Know has qualified for the Oscars 2025 in the live-action short film category. The milestone follows a series of accolades, including winning the first prize in the prestigious La Cinef selection at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year, which brought international attention to the film. Set in a rustic village, the movie revolves around an elderly woman who disrupts her community by stealing a rooster, leading to the disappearance of sunlight and sending the village into chaos. To restore balance, a prophecy is invoked and the woman's family is exiled, embarking on a journey to retrieve the rooster. This quest captures not just the desperation of the characters, but also the deep-rooted beliefs of the community, reflecting the rich tapestry of Indian folk traditions. And on to some business news now. Abu Dhabi's premier energy forum, the Abu Dhabi International Petroleum Exhibition and Conference, or ADIPEC 2024, began on Monday, where India Pavilion is also presenting the nation's comprehensive energy vision through the theme Innovate to Eliminate India's Energy Future. Leading Indian oil and gas companies and Engineers India Limited are showcasing their technological capabilities. Here, showcasing its leadership in executing world-class projects in offshore oil and gas and LNG sectors, EIL is welcoming all valued stakeholders and collaborators to join them in their projects in India and overseas.
We are into the business of consultancy for the hydrocarbon industry, and now we are also offering a lot of solutions for sustainability solutions, green hydrogen, artificial intelligence based tools. We have got a big office in Abu Dhabi which is basically catering to mainly ad hoc business, both supporting their current P5 program as well as their sustainability solutions. We are working for the energy efficiency projects for them, which will decarbonize their existing refineries, and also on many artificial intelligence based tenders that are coming to us. We are participating in those so that we can work for them on sustainability solutions in future.
The 4-day event celebrating its 40th anniversary under the theme Connecting Minds, Transforming Energy has attracted 54 national and international energy companies. The event concludes on November 7th. German companies are wary of change in US economic policy after the election today, according to a news survey. Joining us with more is DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbelu in Berlin. Chiponda, what more can you tell us?
Thanks for having me. Well, German companies are waiting to see what the future economic policy of the US will bring. And that largely depends on the outcome of the US elections today. Now, that's according to a survey by the German Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Any tariff increases on European exports could pose a risk for German companies. And for Germany's export-oriented economy, tariffs and any trade barriers would be an expensive disaster, says the director of the German Economic Institute. Now, when it comes to industries that are especially vulnerable, it is the makers of machine parts, cars, and drugs that are very dependent on trade with the United States. But despite some of the fears, German companies expect business in the US to remain stable.
Thank you, Chiponda. Now, some sporting news. After surpassing the 2,800 ELO rating recently, India's world number 4 chess grandmaster Arjun Ergyasi will face Vidit Gujarati in the opening round of the Chennai Grandmasters at the Anna Centenary Library. This draw for 7-round all-play, all-event features 8 top players. It's the strongest classical chess competition in India. The opening round also pairs Arvind Chidambaram with Iran's Amin Tabatey, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave against Parham Magasudlo, and Levon Aronian with Alexei Sarana. The event's second edition will include a challengers section with female players competing for the first time. So that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can download our DD India mobile app for quick news and updates. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.